Welcome to Biz Alchemy, a podcast about creating a new business paradigm by women, for women. I'm your alchemical host, Jacquelyn, and I'm going to take you on an extraordinary adventure to create a business filled with ease, fun, spaciousness, and abundance. Hustle, be gone. Let's birth a new way. In this episode, I have a fascinating chat with Laura Dick from Laura in Order. Laura's created a new paradigm in her business by combining the yang energy of systems and planning with the yin energy of working in harmony with our feminine cycles. So this is also relevant post-menopause. Laura supports her clients to launch in a way that feels easy and fun. I know. Can you believe that I just used easy and fun in the same sentence as launch? I loved chatting with Laura about this powerful and important way for women to show up in their business in the new business paradigm. So Laura, what was the turning point when you realized that it was time to move away from the patriarchal business model and create a new paradigm for your business?
Well, I think it actually started for me before I even started my business. Back when I was working in corporate, I think we're going back 5 or 6 years ago now, I was working in a very high pressure job and I got really, really burnt out. And that was kind of the point where I went, I can't keep doing this, even though the money is great, like the love for it is not there and my health is suffering. And that's when I started to think about starting my own business. And of course, I started my own business and I carried on a lot of the same habits. While I had a bit more time and space and a bit more control over my schedule and what I can do and when, I was still working a lot all of the time, which was, still not great for me. But when I had started my business, I had met my now mentor, Starsha Washburn, who teaches about doing your business in line with your feminine cycle and understanding the energy rises and falls and of the different phases of your cycle and what that actually means for doing business. And when I first started hearing about this, I was like, oh my goodness, what's she on? Is she crazy? But the more that I started to see her talk about it, the more I started to pay attention, the more I kind of went, I'm going to give this a go. That's when I realized that there really was something to this and it wasn't all just, craziness. And once I started to apply it in my business, I never looked back. Like life just became so much easier. Business became so much easier. And it just makes so much sense to me now that I can't imagine doing things any other way. But sometimes we have to learn the hard way.
Yeah, and I reckon so many women would relate to that story from corporate as well, like that the way you initially started and translating the way you operated in the corporate world into your business when you first set it up. And for you particularly, because your business can have quite a yang energy, what you're doing in your business can be quite yang. So do you maybe want to share a little bit about that? And also maybe how you were finding, like before you came across Starsha's work, how you were finding that being in business but still in quite a yang energy?
Yeah, so a lot of what I support my clients with, you're right, it's very much that yang, that more masculine, like doing and getting stuff done and planning and systems, which is great. You've got to have it. But I think what I'm now finding is that you need and it's exactly what you talk about, you need the balance of the two. You can't be all yang, can't be all yin. You've got to have that balance of the two to make it easy. So it's about having the systems and things in place so that when you get these inspired ideas and things, you can take action and you can get them out into the world, but also about creating that space for the inspiration and the creativity and things to flow, which for me is not something I was naturally very good at. I'm always been about like, let's just keep working and let's keep pushing through and go, and let's do all of the things. And it really has been a slow process of unraveling those habits and learning a new way of doing things. And I still fall back into it at times. I still catch myself trying to push through. Oh, I just want to get these things done, or I just want to do these things for a client project, or, or working on the weekends, even though I said that I didn't want to, things like that. I'm still a work in progress. But the more that I do it, and the more that I create the space, and the more that I make time for the more feminine, the more yin things, the more that I get the downloads and the inspiration and the intuitive kind of guidance of like, let's create this thing, let's do this, or this is a great topic for a blog, or we need to talk about this on Instagram. Whereas when you're busy pushing through and trying to do all of the things and hanging out in that really yang energy all of the time, you don't hear that stuff because you're too busy doing other things. So for me, it's been a real journey of finding the balance and releasing my tight grip on trying to plan and control everything, and really, letting and creating time for that inspiration and that creativity, which it's amazing when you make space for it. But yeah, as I said, it's been a big journey for me to get there.
Yes, it's really interesting because I've been allowing creativity just in my own life. I've been doing some art and some mosaics and something I've never done before. And it takes time away from my business, which is great. But I've also noticed that doing that creativity is bringing heaps more creativity through in my business, which is sort of a byproduct that I didn't really expect. For me, it was more like, I need that time out. But actually, it means the time in my business is so much more productive and creative and easeful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you've let go of I have to do these 101 things. And this person on the internet said, I have to do this in order to be successful. And that person says, I have to do this. And, by creating more of that balance, you can trust the guidance that you're getting, or follow what feels easy, what feels fun, and do that. Because we know when it feels easy and fun, we're going to do it, right? Whereas if we're trying to force ourselves to do something and we're feeling such strong resistance to doing it, but we feel like we have to because that's what we've been told we have to do and how you have to do it, it feels so hard. But it's so freeing when you allow yourself to just follow what feels good, and allow the inspiration to take you in the right direction. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm also interested because before you made this shift, your business was about, you still were talking about launching then and systems, weren't you?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also interested, have the type of clients who are coming to you, have they changed since you've made this shift?
Not hugely, but what I am finding is a lot of the clients that I've had for a long time, now that I'm talking about, I guess, this extra dimension to what I do, it's really resonating for them as well, which has been really great feedback. So, they're sort of coming back for more of the varied things that I'm offering, or the different way that we're looking at things now. I've always worked with a lot of women. Like, my ideal client has always been someone who was interested in intuition and spirituality and energy and more, into that side of things, because my natural inclination to do the masculine and the yang stuff provided a really good balance for those women that spent a lot more time in the feminine energy. Working together, our partnership was really nice, and we sort of balanced each other out. So it's been a lot of the same type of clients, but it has been really good to see how much of what I'm now incorporating into my work resonates with those same clients.
Yes. It's almost like it's giving them permission to access more of themselves in some way, like to bring more of themselves into planning their launch.
Yeah, absolutely.
So can we touch on that a bit? Like, let's touch on the cycles. How is this showing up in your business? So how is following your cycle, how has it changed your business?
Sure. So maybe I'll just start by talking about what the 4 phases are so that this actually makes sense to people listening. If they've never heard this before and are doing exactly what I did when I originally heard about this, are you crazy? So as women, we obviously have a monthly hormonal cycle, as well as our, 24-hour circadian rhythms. We also have this monthly cycle, which is about 28 to 30 days on average. Men, for the most part, their hormonal cycle is pretty steady across the month. Their energy is fairly consistent across the month. It's just their testosterone fluctuates, during the day. For women, we have these 4 key phases of our cycle where our different hormones, so our estrogen, our progesterone, and our testosterone rise and fall. And because of those hormone changes, our energy rises and falls, our confidence, how extroverted or introverted we feel, our verbal skills, all of those things. And so when you start to look at where you are in your cycle, you can start to plan for, I know I'm going to be in a high energy phase. I know I'm going to be more extroverted in this phase. So this is the best time to run a webinar, run a challenge, do podcast interviews, that kind of thing, versus knowing when you're more likely to want to have more downtime, more rest, create more space. If you're an introvert like me, maybe not want to talk to people so much. And so you can really set your business, your launches, your calendar up to work in line with those phases. So the 4 key phases are your menstrual phase. Obviously, that's when you've got your period. And I should just mention, if you don't have a menstrual cycle anymore, you can apply all of the same concepts and use the 4 phases of the moon. So menstrual is that new moon phase. So, naturally wanting to create a bit more space, more downtime, more rest. Obviously some women are less fortunate than others in terms of how that phase of their cycle goes for them. So some women really do need to just stop working during that phase. So that phase is really just about, giving yourself the space to dream and to connect in with your bigger vision. As you move out of the menstrual phase, you move into your follicular phase. And so in this phase, your estrogen is starting to rise. You're feeling more energy. You're starting to feel more extroverted. You're wanting to move more into that more yang kind of doing, planning, problem solving phase. And then we hit kind of the peak, which is your ovulation phase. So at this point, estrogen is at its highest. Your testosterone sort of peaks very quickly as you ovulate, among other things. And so at that point in time, you are the most confident because of your testosterone. You've got the most energy, your verbal skills have peaked. You're feeling like superwoman almost, like you could do anything. And typically in this phase, you kind of feel like you could just do so much. You're so productive. You're just like getting all of the things done, ticking everything off your to-do list, and you feel amazing. After ovulation, your energy starts to dip again. And so this is when your estrogen starts to fall, your progesterone, which is more of your chill hormone. I heard someone the other day refer to it as nature's Valium. So your energy is starting to drop and you're starting to move more back into that feminine, that more yin energy. And so again, it's kind of, tidying up loose ends, looking at where you're going, starting to think about what does next month look like, and creating that space as you move back into your menstrual phase. So it's a really beautiful cycle. And we start to harness those different phases and create space when you need it. Make sure that you've got a plan for what to do so that when you hit those high energy phases, you're really clear and you're really focused and you're really intentional about, right, I need to do all of these things. It's a beautiful thing. Now, of course, and I have also learned this the hard way, when you don't have a plan for those high energy phases, sometimes you've got all of this energy and you don't know where to focus your time and attention. So you end up starting new projects and doing all of these things and like, oh, I'm gonna create a new course, or and you start doing all of these things just to use up that energy without really being focused on the big vision and the goals. And is this the right thing that I should be focusing on in order to get to those goals? So all of those 4 phases work beautiful in harmony when you're using each of them to their advantage. So for me, it's really been about, as I was saying before, creating that space. Luteal phase, actually allowing myself to take time off, I don't start any new projects. One of my new rules, I don't start any new client projects in my luteal phase, because I know for me, particularly as you head sort of into those 3 or 4 days before your period is due, I get really, really tired and I do get a bit cranky. And it's just not fun to be kind of having to be doing all of these things. So I create space. I don't create any new, start any new projects that week. I block out my acuity calendar so people can't book in calls for that week. And it's a really nice, leisurely week for me. I'm still working on client projects behind the scenes and doing bits and pieces, but I have so much more freedom to take a nap in the afternoon if I want to, or create that space for the ideas and the creativity like we were talking about before. Because I have always been very good at the masculine, the systems and the planning and that kind of thing, the other phases, follicular and ovulation, I've always I love hanging out in those phases. I'm like, this is great. I'm getting so much done. So I haven't seen a huge change there. But for me, the biggest change has been not trying to carry that energy through into the other phases and keep trying to push through, even though I wasn't feeling it, and trying to just tick more things off the to-do list. I really focused this is what I want to achieve, and this is what we're doing in those phases for the next month or the next cycle. So yeah, it's a really beautiful thing once you get into the rhythm. But it certainly was for me a big learning curve to get to the point where I am now.
Yeah, when you think about it, our education system is based on a patriarchal model. We have to show up all the time, even as teenagers when hormones are going, you still got to show up in these hours. And so then, of course, the business world is the same, because as I'll often talk about, not in a negative way, but it's a patriarchal model because men created it because they were the ones in business. And like you said, hormonally, they could just keep showing up and doing their thing and being their yang.
Absolutely. The corporate world is perfect for men.
Exactly. So it's not a negative thing, but it's just then when women go into that environment or create their own business and they're still running on, like you said right at the beginning, they're still running on this model that it's actually been set up for men, and it doesn't take into account those beautiful phases that you talk about. It's such an honoring, and I felt really peaceful. Like as you were talking about it, it was just like this knowing through me, and it was like, oh, that's so good. That sounds so good.
Absolutely. And look, I've taken a lot of inspiration from you as well. You and I have obviously known each other for a few years now, and the concept of the yin week in your business was inspired by what you often talk about. And it was really where I went, well, when would make sense for me? For me, that yin week luteal phase, because I know that I'm tired and I just want to create more space that week. I'm really lucky. My menstrual phase is pretty smooth running. And I know not every woman has the luxury to say that. So for me, yeah, creating that yin week, that more space, it's such a blessing.
Yeah. Well, I'm postmenopausal now, so I don't have my bleeding to guide me. But for me, that has been a game changer for my business, having that space. But I also love that when I shared with you about doing these podcast interviews and you said, well, the best time is the full moon. Whereas normally, because my yin week is my creative week in my business, that's where I create my content. And I probably would have had a tendency to book these things and, have these calls in that week because I'd be thinking, oh, I'm creating. So that was really helpful that you pointed that out to me.
Love it. Yes. And of course, so the full moon is your ovulation phase, essentially. Now, historically, it doesn't always happen now, but historically, back in the days before we had electricity and that kind of thing, women would commonly bleed with the new moon, which was, of course, you would retreat from the world, you would give yourself the space and the downtime. And as a community, the full moon, the light is bright. That's when everyone would get out. They would socialize. They would be more extroverted, which is why often subbing the phases of the moon, if you don't have a cycle, works so well, because historically, that's the rhythm that our bodies were working to. So yes, around the full moon is always a great time if you're not sure to run webinars, podcast interviews, that kind of thing.
And I'm also wondering though, if You just mentioned before about, for some people, they might have difficulty with their menstrual cycle, but I really wonder whether if you really began to operate in this way, so you were allowing the hormonal changes that came with that phase of your cycle, you're allowing them more and you weren't hiding them and suppressing them, and you were being with it more, whether it actually might help bring some regulation and some ease, I suppose, in some ways.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is always paying attention and having that awareness of what's going on for you. So one of the things that we've learned as we're training with Stasha to become period coaches, and it's something I've been doing for a few years, is charting my cycle. Now, lots of people, do this also for fertility or to avoid conception. For me, it was really just about understanding where I was in my cycle and what that rhythm looks like for me. One of the things that I discovered is that for me, the post-ovulation dip was actually much worse for me than any other part of my cycle, because I would go from feeling like Wonder Woman one day to not wanting to get out of bed the next, because I was just so exhausted. And so creating the space to allow for that definitely has helped get into a better rhythm. But because I've had that awareness, I've also been able to start working through how can I support my body so that crash doesn't have such a big effect on me. And also knowing too, because I do allow the rest in that phase, my menstrual phase is so much easier because I've allowed the space for my body to do what it needs to do. So absolutely, when you work in that rhythm and you're in that cycle, it really does allow your body to sort of return back to what it needs to do, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. Love it. I love it. I so wish I'd known this years ago. Now, something else I've just got to talk about here, because you do focus on launching, and you do. I was reading one of your blog posts and it said about launching being easy and fun. Now, I would say most female entrepreneurs do not put those three words in there. No matter how hard they try.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, Laura, tell us the launching. I mean, first, what are you meaning by launching? Maybe for those listening who might be fairly new to business, and also, how can it be easy and fun?
Absolutely, you're totally right. I think we come into this online business world, and there are so many gurus and business coaches and mentors out there that have their particular way of doing things. And for a long time, what I see a lot of and observed a lot of is you've got to do it my way and this is the only way it's going to work. And it always seems so strange to me, because just because something works for one person doesn't mean it's automatically going to work for you. Like, we're all so different. We have different strengths. We have different talents. We like different things. I'm really naturally very good at the tech side of things. A lot of my clients hate that stuff. And so this expectation that just because this internet guru said you have to do it this way and this is the only way, it just seems so ridiculous to me that we're forcing ourselves to do something that doesn't necessarily feel in alignment. So when you think about launching, there are so many different ways you could go about a launch. Now, when I'm talking launching, I'm talking about a concentrated period of time where you are promoting your course or your program or even your one-on-one services. You've got, this window of time when you are focused on either opening the doors and inviting new people into your membership or your program, or selling out, say, your one-to-one services for a period of a few months. The typical kind of model for launching is, you've got to do webinars, which is great. I love webinars. Webinars are fun for me. I do them in my ovulation phase, but not everyone loves webinars. Some people just don't feel confident talking, presenting, getting in front of people. Some people are excellent at writing. Some people are excellent at video. Some people, we've all got these different skills. And so thinking that you can only launch by doing a webinar and then forcing yourself to do something that just feels so hard and so out of alignment with who you are and how you want to show up, it just makes it feel even harder. So one of the things that I've really been, particularly the last 6-8 months, really working with my clients on is what feels good to you. Because when you pick what feels easy and what feels natural and what feels fun, one, you're actually going to do it rather than putting it off and then, never getting around to it. But because it feels fun, you're taking that higher vibration into it. You don't have that resistance. So if you're forcing yourself to do a webinar and you rock up and you really don't want to be there, your body's going to be all contracted. You're not going to have the presentation style that really exudes confidence and like you're really happy and excited to be there. Like you can't fake that. People can feel it in your energy. So really what I want women to understand is like pick what feels good for you. If doing a launch where you are focusing on beautifully crafted blog posts, written posts, email sequences feels really good and you've got an engaged email community, do that. If you love webinars or Facebook Lives or, running a 3-day challenge or a 3-day experience, and that feels really good for you, then do that. It's not about what is right or wrong. It's about picking what is best for you. Because as I was saying before, and quite rightly, that the energy you take into something is more important than what you're actually doing. So it can be easy and it can be fun. And I'm not saying that there isn't work to do. There's absolutely still work to do. But when it feels easy and it feels fun, that work doesn't feel hard. You want to show up, you want to do it. And of course, you invite in more sales. And it's something that I'm definitely going to be talking about a lot more over the coming months, just trying to help people see that you're allowed to do it whatever way feels best for you. There is no right or wrong.
I love that. And this is so aligned with what I've been talking about recently on the podcast. But also it's actually been coming up with my mastermind ladies, exactly this. And this whole concept that you've got your unique path, your unique gifts, your unique business. So how can you follow a formula? Because, all those components together. But also that thing of what lights you up and what is a joy and what is easy, what feels easy to do. And the other thing is that can change a bit too. Sometimes it might be that actually I really want to be live and doing Facebook Lives right now. And then later on it might be actually, no, I'm in a sort of a writing phase now. And I feel I express myself better writing at the moment, and giving yourself permission to make the change and just show up with what's bringing you joy at the time.
Absolutely. Could not agree more with that. It's our business. We're allowed to do it however we want. Yes, we can take advice from mentors, but we have to follow the energy of what feels good for us in that moment. And what felt great 6 months ago may just feel really hard right now. And as much as we have these monthly hormonal cycles, I think we very much also have seasons in our business as well, much like we have, the 4 seasons of the year. And so there are times where you may want to run a webinar or show up live every day or be doing all of those more extroverted things because you're in that season of business or in that season of your life or whatever's going on for you. But also just trusting and allowing that if that's not feeling good for you right now, maybe you're, in that autumn season, that winter season, and doing something a little more intimate feels better for you, then trust that. Follow your intuition, follow the energy. Just because you did it once that way, you don't have to do it the same way again.
Oh, Laura, I love it. You obviously, you feel so joyful, like talking about this. And have you noticed that? Are you showing up in your business with more joy now and more ease?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I've made a big shift in the last couple of months in particular was moving away from Facebook. Now, when I first started my business, I was in a lot of Facebook groups for entrepreneurs. I had my Facebook page, and it just over the last year, it felt hard. Like I really did not want to go on Facebook. And obviously, all of the things that went on in 2020 definitely played a part of that. But it just got to the point where I was like, Facebook is just not fun for me anymore. And I had for a long time really been pulled towards Instagram. But I was like, oh, I don't want to have to learn a new platform and all of those things. And so I ignored it for a really long time. And then finally, September, October last year, I started to just allow myself to play with Instagram. And slowly over the last couple of months, I've let go of Facebook. Well, it's not easy. I still feel a little bit nervous about maybe I'm cutting myself off from communities and that kind of thing. But showing up on Instagram is so fun for me right now. I show up on stories most days and I will just talk about what's going on for me. I might give little mini trainings. I've even been playing with Instagram Reels, which if you'd asked me that 6 months ago, I would have said, no way, that's not me. But I'm just following the energy, following the fun. Sometimes it's hard to let go of those safety nets or those things that we've held onto for a really long time. But I'm just trusting the energy and allowing it to be fun, and knowing that I can always go back to Facebook in 6 months or 3 months if that feels right. But for now, I just need to have a little break. So I'm hanging out on Instagram and I'm having heaps of fun, and I'm making all of these new beautiful connections with people I never would have met if I just stayed in the Facebook group zone. So
I love that, Laura, because I've been talking about that for 2 or 3 months now. It's time to come off Facebook. The energy of it's changed. It's, it just doesn't feel aligned. I'm still there, although I've cut down a lot. I'm also loath to let go of some of those connections. It's the people that I was connecting with on Facebook. But interestingly, what's happened for me recently is I've suddenly on Insight Timer and finding a community there, and suddenly went, there are communities in other places. It is time to evolve and shift. As your energy evolves and shifts, it just changes. There is a letting go process in that, though, isn't there? Oh,
yes.
Which can be hard.
Yes, it can be really scary. I mean, you and I met through Facebook groups. I met some of my closest friends and biz buddies through Facebook groups. And it's not, as you said, I don't want to let go of the people and the connections. I really value that. But every time I would open up the Facebook app, my whole body would just be like, no, don't do it. So had to just follow it.
So you've mentioned you're on Instagram now. So do you want to just share with us about where anyone who's listening, how they can find you?
Yes, absolutely. So please, if you're on Instagram, come find me. I'm at Laura in Order. As I said, I tend to show up most days in stories, just a little bit of behind the scenes and some mini trainings and sharing tips and insights and having a little bit of fun, and also Instagram Reels. So yes, if you're on socials, Instagram is the best place to find me. Or you can come check out my website, laurainorder.com. I've got all sorts of blogs and free resources on there if you're interested in learning more about launching. There's lots of juicy info for you to check out there.
Thank you, Laura. I could just keep chatting with you, though, because it's so exciting what you're doing. And I've watched this shift in your business.
Yes.
Because we've worked together for some time. So it's really exciting for me to hear you embrace that yin to bring in this integrated business model.
Yes.
So exciting. So have you got any little nuggets, any little gems? What are your final words, your parting words for the listeners?
My parting words, I think it just ties back to what we were talking about a few moments before, is it's your business and you're allowed to do it your way, in a way that feels good for you. You don't have to follow someone else's rules. So choose what feels fun and what feels easy. It's my motto right now. If it doesn't feel fun and easy, then I'm not doing it.
Perfect. I love it. I know that's mine too. My word for this year's play.
Love it.
So simple as that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Laura. It's just been such a delight. And I'm really very, very grateful. Thanks for listening to Biz Alchemy. I'm Jacquelyn Atkins. If you enjoyed this show, I'd love it if you subscribed, shared with your friends, and left a review. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, head to jacquelynatkins.com. Until next time, enjoy creating alchemy in your biz.